Now that we've got our tools set up, let's take a look at how we're going to make the front end look. And we're going to take really the generic bootstrap theme and leave it be, at least in the beginning here. We may, you know, get a little more creative with it later. But part of the reason we're using Bootstrap is so that we can save a lot of time in fiddling with the look and feel of the front end. And even the admin panel. You're going to notice this is going to help out a lot in the admin. So let's flip back over to Aptana. And we've got our index.php open. I'm going to go ahead and close this start page because it's bothering me. Now let's go ahead and get rid of our hello world here, the whole thing there. And we'll go ahead and save that. Now we need to talk about the user interface, or basically the way the page is going to look. And again, it's going to be kind of simple, at least to begin with. But we're going to go ahead and create what we'll call a UI or UX document. And there's a lot of really great tools for creating user interfaces or wireframing. Right now, to keep it simple, we're just going to use a Google Drive drawing. So I've already set this up here, and then again, it's in our public folder, so this will be accessible. And so I'm just going to create some shapes here. And wireframing is actually a pretty important job in the industry. You can have a job strictly doing wireframing. It may seem funny that you get a job for drawing boxes and stuff, but it is definitely really important. Now, again, since we're doing this in a really simple fashion, we don't need to get really in depth with this. So we're just going to make, some boxes here. So this could be our navigation, and so we'll just call it navigation. And we're going to go ahead and we know we're going to have a footer. So we'll create another box down here and we'll just call this the footer. So now we're going to have a content area. We'll just make this giant box here and call that content area. And there you go. Like I said, really simple. So simple that this almost seems unnecessary, but it's a good thing to start with, and we'll add to this document as we go. But right now, just to get things set up, we know we're going to need a navigation, or you might call it a menu, up at the top, and a content area to put our content, which this content area may have columns and things like that, but really, I don't know what's going to go in there yet. But then we'll have a footer. So let's hop over to Bootstrap and let's take a look at how we're actually going to do this. Back to the getbootstrap.com. Pretty much anything you need to know about Bootstrap is here. And it's laid out in a pretty straightforward fashion. If we stay in the Get Started here, we can take a look at some actual examples. This could help you out. So you can see some examples of some simple Bootstrap pages. What we're going to do is go over up here to the top and click on CSS. And over here you can see some of the common elements. What we're looking for is the navigation, which is actually over here in components. And we want to go to navbar. So let's take a look at this code. Now this code here pretty much represents what's going on here in this example. Got some drop downs, a little search bar, things like that. Now we don't need all of this. We're going to go ahead and just take some of it. So we take a look at some of the classes. So we need to have the navbar class, and then we need to tell it what kind of style to give it, the look and feel. This default is going to set it to this kind of generic gray look and feel, and we'll just go ahead and keep that, and then we'll give it the role of navigation. So inside the first nav tag, do class navbar, then space, and we want navbar dash default. And then after the class property, do role equals navigation. So There we go. Now let's give a couple lines in between our nav tags. And pop over to Bootstrap's page again. Now there's some pretty cool mobile options in here. We're going to ignore those for now. And we're just going to create a basic navigation. So we're going to skip down here to this here. This is the UL tag. This will create an unordered list. And if you're familiar with HTML and CSS, you'll know that we use unordered lists pretty much all the time when we're making navigations. So we make a UL tag here. And let's go ahead and give us a line. And let's go ahead and make a list item as well, because we know that's going to be part of it. Let's pop back over to the Bootstrap page and take a look at our classes. We're going to tell it needs to be nav and navbar-nav. So in our UL tag, we need to do class, nav, and then navbar-nav. Then after that, we need to create some list items that have links inside of them. Links are done with the A tag. It stands for anchor. So let's go ahead and set that up. And we're just going to make one of these, and then we can kind of copy and paste. So we'll do A, href. Then the href property pretty much gives the instructions on where to go if somebody clicks on this link. So in there, right now we're just going to put a pound sign, which means basically it's an empty link. It's not going to do anything. Let's go ahead and put some text in here for this link. So in between these A tags, we'll just say home for the home page. And let's go ahead and just copy this a few times. So Control C, then Control V, and we'll go ahead and change some of these. And we're just going to put some really generic stuff in here, like about us, FAQ, and contact. And save that. Now let's pop back over to the Bootstrap page and just take a look at the way these are set up. We're not really missing anything. The only thing that we could add is the active class, which in this case you see right here. This is the one that has the active class, which just gives it a darker gray. So we'll use this down the road. When you click on one of these links, we'll set that class to active so that it shows that this is the page you're on. So we'll go ahead and give this class to the first one, the home here. So in the LI, we need to do class and active. So again, we'll make this, more dynamic later. Let's go ahead and go back to our browser, refresh our page, and there you go. We've got our nav bar, our links up here. If you click on them, they don't go anywhere. You see it just puts the pound sign up here in the top. And our home page is active. And let's go ahead and put some comments in here. For those who are a little familiar with HTML, you know that commenting your closing tags can be really helpful. When you start getting a lot of HTML in here, it's kind of hard to figure out which tags go to what. So you can kind of format these however you want. This is how I do it. I'm just going to say in nav. And if I needed to be more specific, I could call this like main navigation or something like that. You can come up with your own way of doing things. But right now we'll just keep it at in nav. So now if we flip back over to our UI document here, we need a content area. So back over to the Bootstrap documentation. Let's go to the CSS panel here. We're going to look at kind of the overview here, and most importantly we're going to go to containers. Now this container is going to hold all of our content. Now if we add this container div, it's going to by default put everything into a div that's smaller than the page, and it's going to center it. So let's go ahead and add that. So underneath our nav here, let's go ahead and create a div. Those who aren't familiar, a div is pretty much an empty container, or to not be confused with the term, the class we're about to give it, just kind of an empty box, no style, nothing. But when we give it a class, then it gets some style, and then in this case we're going to give it the class container, which is going to do what I mentioned just a minute ago. So in here, let's just, so we can see something, do another h1 tag. inside there, we'll just put content area. We'll save that. And when we go back to our page, refresh, and there you go, content area. You see how it's centered here. Now our navigation looks a little off. If you notice on the Bootstrap page, their navigation starts in the center here. However, the bar goes all the way across. So if we want to contain this and put it in line with the rest of the content, we need to use this container div. Now we could put it around the entire navigation. However, let's see what that result is. And if you're not familiar with classes, we can reuse classes on our page as many times as we want. However, if we're going to use IDs, we cannot. And that'll make sense a little later. Let's go ahead and tab this out. And we'll save and we'll go take a look at our page. So there you go. It put our navigation centered to match up with our content area here. However, it made our bar not look the way I want it. Now you may want your navigation bar to be in the center like this. So if that's the effect you want, go for it. But we want ours to kind of span across, similar to the Bootstrap page here. So instead of putting the entire navigation in this container, let's take this container out and let's put it around the unordered list, the UL tag. So go ahead and copy that, and let's take this closing one here and make sure that's up here at the bottom of the UL. And we'll go ahead and tab that out. Do a little bit of formatting here. Let's go ahead and highlight this and do a shift tab to back this up a little bit. There we go. So now we've contained the unordered list that holds our links. So our nav bar, which has the style to it that makes it gray and have that kind of bar look, is actually outside of the container, which means it's going to go ahead and span across the page. Whereas the links and stuff are going to be in the middle. So let's go save this and take a look. There you go. So that's the look I wanted. Now lastly, we have our footer. So let's hop back over here to Bootstrap. Now for our footer, I want to kind of have that kind of fixed footer at the bottom. So it's always at the bottom. If you've worked on pages before, a lot of times your footer ends up being right at the bottom of the content, but not necessarily at the bottom of the entire browser. Now, for the life of me, I thought there was some documentation on here for doing that footer, but I can't find it. So I do know that there is an example here. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. And let's find that here. And here it is, sticky footer. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And you can see the footer down here. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's involved with that. So if we go to view page source, we can go down here and we see that the footer is given an ID of footer. But they've also got this special CSS here written to handle that footer. So let's go ahead and do this our own way a little bit. Let's pop over to Aptana. And because we have HTML5, we can go ahead and use some HTML5 tags. Let's do the footer tag. And let's give it the ID. Again, IDs can only be used once. Equals. And we're just going to call this footer. And so inside here, we're just going to put some generic content. Now, we want to make sure that that content stays in the center. So we first want to wrap it in a container div. So div class container. And then inside here, we'll just make a paragraph tag, and this is my footer. Save. So, you know, a lot of times this is where like a copyright goes or something like that. And we'll mess with this later. So we'll say save. And let's hop over and take a look at our page. Refresh. There you go. This is my footer. Now it did some of what we wanted it to do. It's lined up with the content area here in the center, but it's definitely not sticky. So let's pop back over this source we opened up here. And let's click on the sticky footer CSS. So this right here is what we need. So let's go ahead and copy all this. And we'll hop into Aptana. And just for now, we'll go ahead and put this in another file later. But we're just going to go ahead and embed this here in the head. So let's go ahead and make a style tag. And then go ahead and paste. So I noticed there's this wrap rule created. So I have a feeling I'm going to need that. So let's hop back over to our page, refresh, and yeah, that has something to do with it. Because here's our footer, but it's not doing what we want. So let's take a look at their source again. And we realize that the entire page is in this wrap. So let's pop back to Aptana, scroll down here, and right after the body, let's create this div. And we'll give it a class, give it an ID, equals wrap. And we need to take the closing part of this div tag, cut that out, and paste it down here after the footer, right before the body closes. And we'll go ahead and tab this out. In fact, while we're at it, let's push this body back. And the head. I'm getting a little meticulous about how our code is set up here. And let's go ahead and back that up. There you go. So let's save this and take a look in the browser. And really quick, I realized a mistake. We want to make sure this wrap div here actually ends before the footer starts. This is what's going to be pushing that footer down. So go ahead and put that there. And we'll go ahead and send this footer tag back. And before we go any further, let's go ahead and do a little bit of commenting here. So, end wrap. Footer. Save that. And take a look at our page. There we go. Now we have our footer down at the bottom. And before we move on, there's one thing I forgot to add. If we go back to the Get Bootstrap page, and we want to put this viewport tag in here. This is going to be important down the road. So let's go ahead and copy this meta tag for the viewport. And it also reminded me that we forgot another important part, the title of the page. So let's go ahead and put that in there in the head. And then before that, let's go ahead and put our title tag in. And we'll just say Atom CMS 3.0, 2.0. Save that. And if you're not familiar, the importance of the title tag is to get the URL out of the tab here and replace it with the title of our page. So this is our real generic setup for the front end, and we'll get a little more detail with this later on.